Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marlene Nagel, and I'm with the Mid-America Regional Council. Thank you all for joining us and for your interest in this grant opportunity. I'm going to use a PowerPoint and kind of go through information about the grant opportunity this afternoon. I'm going to introduce our partners in this project and I'll go through some other information and then we'll leave time for questions. I would like to ask if each of you could put in the chat your name and organization, and that way we have a record of who participated today, and we can make sure we can follow up with you on additional information. We are recording the session so that we have a record of it, and that if needed, we can, share that out with others. We also ask if you could put yourself on mute if you're not currently on mute. And if you do have a question, if you could put it in the chat, and we'll make sure to monitor the chat and answer all the questions as we're proceeding through the information or after we've shared our PowerPoint and kind of opening it up for questions. We will have one more session is scheduled for an informational webinar. If you or colleagues of yours might want to join, we have one on July the 10th at 10 a.m. and we'll do a better job, I'm sorry, of getting the link out to everyone so that you can have it on your calendars. So with that, I'm going to share a PowerPoint and kind of get us started. Okay. Oops, sorry. So these are the items that we're hoping to review with you today. We're going to talk a little bit about what the U.S. Department of Energy is looking for with this program, a little bit about our selection process and timeline. We're going to go through briefly the information that we're asking for in the application. We've identified some selection criteria. We'll go through those and then we'll open it up for questions. So I'm sure many of you are aware that in 2020 and 2021, the Biden administration put forward and Congress authorized a number of legislative initiatives to address clean energy and infrastructure. And so this program is funded under the bipartisan infrastructure law. The Department of Energy has two programs under the Renew America banner. One is targeted for nonprofit organizations, and that is the program that we have been funded under. The second is for public schools. The purpose of this program is really to help nonprofit organizations that serve disadvantaged populations and communities to lower their operating expenses, their utility costs, so that they might put more of their resources into achieving their mission of serving the community. It's also intended to reduce carbon emissions and improve the health and safety of those who are using the buildings. So we have 6 partners in addition to Mid-America Regional Council. Community Capital Fund is a community organization that works with many neighborhood and community organizations serving disadvantaged people and communities, and they are helping us in a number of ways. One is they've helped us in identifying potential nonprofits who may be eligible for this program. And I think Andrew Davis is just joining us, and he's the lead staff person for that organization. They helped us in forming a community advisory board, and that community advisory board will assist us in the selection of the nonprofits. We also, as part of this program, are going to be promoting employment opportunities as well as encouraging minority and other disadvantaged small businesses to take advantage of the construction opportunities that this program will offer. And so Community Capital Fund will be helping us in outreach to the community on those aspects of the program. Climate Action KC is a nonprofit. Ashley Sadowski is with us this afternoon, and she's the executive director of the Building Energy Exchange, which is helping to create high-performing, energy-efficient buildings, both new construction and renovation. And she's going to be providing us with guidance and support through the selection and implementation of the program. Metropolitan Energy Center provides a lot of services to the community, and with both renewable energy and energy conservation. They have an important tool that they are encouraging building owners to utilize called it's an EPA tool, and it is the Energy Star Portfolio Manager. And we're going to be providing more information about their tool and how to make use of it to allow you to benchmark your energy use and to monitor over time improvements as you are able to improve the energy efficiency of your buildings. We selected, as part of our grant process, 2 engineering firms with expertise in energy conservation. And I'm sorry, Metropolitan Energy Center is represented today by Brittany Garou. I'm sorry, Brittany, if I've mispronounced your last name. Custom Engineering is led by Joe Davis. He's on the call today. And then Integrity Energy Partners is the second engineering firm that we are using for this program. And I think Brian Little might be on the call. And then finally, United Way is assisting us in promoting the program to eligible nonprofits. So the eligibility criteria that the Department of Energy has said we need to follow is one that any organization that receives assistance must be a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and they must own their building. And so we're going to need to be able to provide to the Department of Energy documentation of your 501c3 status and of your building ownership. And the name of the nonprofit needs to be the name of the building owner on your title. The organizations that we select must serve disadvantaged people and communities. The White House has an initiative called Justice 40, and they have identified census tracts, areas around the nation in communities that are serving disadvantaged people. The grant allows up to $200,000 in improvements per building, and we will need to make sure that as we look at those improvements, they have to achieve a certain level of energy savings. So we may not be able to do all improvements that a building owner might desire, but we'll try and do the ones that are most important to reducing energy costs. There are some environmental and historic preservation requirements of the program. We'll need to make sure that we can meet those. Every nonprofit that receives funds must be enrolled in the SAM.gov system, which provides a unique identifier number to every organization that enrolls. It's not a heavy lift in terms of going through that process, but it's something you would need to do if ideally during the application process, but certainly before we could approve and make any grant awards. And then, there may be a few small nonprofit organizations that we would want to assist through this program. And if they do not have the fiscal capacity to manage federal funds, we might be able to serve as a fiscal agent on their behalf. Sorry, I can't get the slides to advance. There we go. We have formed a community advisory board. It's composed of about, I think it's 28 members. They represent neighborhoods. We have some local government staff that are participating. We have individuals who are from foundations and other funding organizations. And we have a number of individuals with expertise in architecture, engineering, and energy conservation. The role of the Community Advisory Board is really twofold. One is to help with outreach to eligible organizations, and second, to help us in the review of applications that we receive and to help us in selecting the nonprofits that we're able to assist. With the funding that we have received, we expect to be able to support about 25 to 30 nonprofit organizations. Okay. There we go. The energy improvements that are allowable under this program are the more conventional improvements that you might expect. We're not able to do solar energy, and we could do heat pumps if they are above ground and not underground. One of the requirements we have is that we're not going to disturb ground to install any improvements. So, but generally, we're more likely to see improvements with LED lighting, with heating and cooling systems, particularly high efficiency units, and with energy system controls to better control the use of energy within a building. Other improvements that are eligible could be windows, doors, roof, and insulation. Many organizations provide food pantries, so there may be large refrigeration units or freezers, or they might provide congregate meal support. So we want to make sure we're able to help those where we can achieve at least a 15% annual energy cost savings. This is a bit about the grant timeline. We were notified in late October by the U.S. Department of Energy, and we're frankly still waiting for the final grant agreement. But we have been authorized to begin work and to incur costs. We've set August 23rd as our deadline for applications. We're going to take about a week after that to review all of the applications, make sure we have the information we need to be able to fully evaluate the request, and to make sure that the organization and the building are eligible for this program. Then during the month of September, we'll be conducting energy assessments or level 1 energy audits for all of the eligible buildings, so that we can work with the organizations to begin to understand what kind of improvements you are hoping to achieve with your building, and assess a bit about whether or not we think it could help you in achieving that 15% energy saving goal. Then during the first 3 weeks of October, our Community Advisory Board will review the applications, and they will identify the top 25 to 30 buildings that we hope we'll be able to support. And then over the next month, we'll be working with Custom Engineering and Integrity Energy Solutions to do energy partners to do level 2 energy audits, more in-depth audits of the desired improvements that your organization might want to make if you're one of the top 25 to 30 initially selected by the Community Advisory Board. We'll also review projects to make sure they meet the environmental and historic preservation requirements. And then by late November, we'll be submitting our portfolio of priority buildings to the Department of Energy for their approval. We then hope that before the end of the year, we can begin to work with nonprofits that are selected on bid documents and cost estimates, so that the first quarter of next year we'll be executing subrecipient agreements with those selected nonprofits, and then they in turn will be bidding and selecting their contractors and working through contracts to hopefully then begin the work. So talk a little bit now about the application form that's online on the MARC website. And first, so just kind of going through the application, we try to number the question areas. One, we want the name of your organization, and we did add a place for you to upload a copy of your IRS 501c3 letter so that we can confirm that the 501c3 is the name of the organization that is requesting the funds. We want your contact information and your mailing address, and your mailing address may be different than the building address of where you'd like the building improvement to be made. So for example, if an organization has several buildings but wants to focus on one, your mailing address may be different than that building. We'd like your SAM registration information, so that's the UEI number and the date that your SAM registration expires. And then we would like the year that the 501c3 approved your, or the IRS approved your 501c3 status. Question 6 asks for a brief overview of programs and services that your organization provides, particularly as it relates to disadvantaged people and communities, the geographic area that you serve, and our service area is the 9-county Kansas City metro area. We serve 4 counties on the Kansas side: Johnson, Wyandotte, Leavenworth, and Miami. And on the Missouri side, Jackson, Clay, Platte, Ray, and Cass. And then we'd like an estimate of the number of clients that you served in the past year. And if it's possible to break it out for those that are served from that building that you are asking for funds to support, that would be ideal. Question 7 asks specifically about the programs and services that are offered in the building that is proposed for improvements. You may have a broader array of programs and services you deliver, but more limited ones within that particular building. So we'd like to sort of understand the role of that building in your organization's efforts. And then one of the things that DOE has asked us to be able to document is that the organizations we select have a need for both the energy conservation improvements and for the financial help to accomplish that. And then you might help us understand what you see as the possible benefits from this investment. And then question 9 asks for your total operating budget and the percent you spend annually on utilities, particularly electricity and natural gas. So the next set of questions are about the building that you're hoping to have improved. So question 10, if you all could be on mute, that would be helpful. The name of the building owner as it appears on the title, and that name has to be consistent with the name identified to the IRS for your 501c3 and as listed in the SAM.gov registration. We want to know the age of your building, so the year that it was built. And then if your building has had any major renovations, particularly energy upgrades, we'd like some information about that. And there's if you click yes on certain questions, then some additional questions will appear that ask you for a little more information about the renovations. The same about historic preservation if your building is more than 45 years old, it could be considered historic. And we'll be working with the state historic preservation offices in Missouri and Kansas if we identify buildings that are considered historic, just to make sure that we comply with any requirements they may have. One of the DOE requirements is that we can't help support buildings that are in the 100-year floodplain. So if you know that your building is in an area that's considered a 100-year floodplain, I'm sorry, but we won't be able to assist you. Then we have a question where we want to understand the total square footage of your building, the number of rooms you have, and the number of stories of your building, and then the type of property that you have. And that could be commercial, and it could be in terms of your zoning or type of use, could be office, or industrial, could be housing or childcare facility. It could be a healthcare facility. We're also interested if you have other building users other than your own organization occupying the space of the building, and whether you rent out any of that space. We'd like to know a little bit about the use of the building. So the hours that programs and services are delivered, the number of people who might be in the building on an average day, all of these things sort of affect the energy use, number of computers. And then if you have a food pantry or meal service operation, a bit about that service and the types of equipment that are included in your building. Then we want to know who your utility providers are, and then a bit about your heating and cooling and hot water and ventilation systems, and if you have an energy control system, a bit of information about it. We have a general question about whether there are issues with your heating and cooling systems that you'd want us to be aware of. We'd like to know a little bit about your interior lighting systems, a little bit about the type of roof and age of the roof. If you have any prior energy assessments or audits, say over the last 5 years, if you would provide us a copy, that would be helpful to us. Finally, we'd like to get information about the past 12 months of energy use, particularly for electricity and natural gas. And then the last 4 questions really are sort of your assessment of your capacity for this program, your operational and financial capacity to manage a project. It is a reimbursement program. I can tell you that Mark does a good job of reimbursing contractors or subrecipients quickly as soon as we receive all of the necessary documentation and information. We try not to keep anybody waiting to receive reimbursement. We'd like to know if you've had experience in receiving prior federal funds, what program, agency, and year, so we have an idea of your track record or experience with federal funds. And then finally, we'd like you to be able to report to us a year after closeout what your energy costs are, if you're selected, and the improvements are made, so that we have kind of an understanding of and can evaluate the true energy savings that the improvements allowed us to help you achieve. So we have a few tools on the MARC website. One is for under program areas. There's some links to maps to show you those areas that have been identified as Justice 40 or environmental justice areas. And then Metropolitan Energy Center has the opportunity for us to use the Energy Star Portfolio Manager, and you can sign up and have an account to be able to make use of that system. And we have worked with Brittany and her team, and they are going to offer 2 hour-long training sessions And we'll send out more information about it. One is going to be on July the 17th and the second on August the 5th. And that would allow you to make use of that to begin to benchmark energy use for your building. Regarding the selection criteria, we have identified points for the location, making sure that the project and the building is within area and in a area considered disadvantaged by using either the EPA or the Department of Energy tools to justify the Justice 40 requirement. While there is a priority to focus on disadvantaged areas, we know there are disadvantaged residents throughout our community. And we do want to try to the extent we can to provide some resources across the region. Under need, at least 51% of the space of the building needs to be devoted to program delivery. We want to understand your organization's mission, its building use, and the number of clients served to kind of document the need for these improvements. We want to understand that your budget, like many nonprofits, are limited and that energy costs are high and pose a burden to your ability to achieve your mission, and then a willingness to maintain ownership. Two other areas for the selection criteria. One is trying to assess the organizational capacity to receive and successfully carry out this program. One of the things that will be required for the project is that we comply with certain federal rules for construction. One is that there is a Buy America requirement. So right now, all of the equipment that is utilized for the energy improvements, such as a HVAC system, has to meet the Buy America provisions. And our intention is to work with the nonprofits we select to try and identify those suppliers that might be in the best position to meet that Buy America provision. We're working with the Department of Energy right now to make sure there are reasonable suppliers available with product available to meet this program's requirements. And then another requirement for a lot of the public construction, if you've been involved in that previously, is the Davis-Bacon requirements. They want to make sure that the contractors that are hired to do this work are paying their workers a livable wage. And so we have to document on a weekly basis while contractors are on site the salaries of the workers on site. And then finally, we want to look at energy savings, and through the initial energy assessments or level 1 audits, we'll begin to identify the extent to which we'll meet that 15% energy savings. Some additional eligibility criteria as you think about whether or not your organization is eligible. We're focused on social service agencies, domestic violence and homeless shelters, emergency assistance providers, and childcare providers. If an organization is located in a disadvantaged neighborhood, we will consider art organizations, libraries, healthcare, workforce development. And for faith-based organizations that are eligible, if they're a 501c3, that provide social services, at least 51% of the space has to be dedicated to the provision of those social services. At this time, because our funding is limited, we're not going to be accepting applications from K through 12 education or colleges and universities, animal shelters, or single family or multi-unit housing buildings. I mentioned there are a number of federal terms and conditions, and we can hopefully, once we get our Department of Energy grant agreement will have their formal terms and conditions, and we can share those online so that you can see those. But these are generally ones that you'll see with every federal program around non-discrimination, around debarment certification, prohibition against substance abuse. Most federal programs require that agencies have a drug-free workplace policy. I mentioned Buy America and Davis-Bacon. We will ask that you have liability and workman's comp coverage. I mentioned, well, it's a reimbursement grant, and we do require documentation to reimburse and that you retain your records for a period of time. DOE wants you to allow for site visits or to participate in virtual meetings so that they gain knowledge of the program that's as it's being carried out. And the funds will be available only for construction and equipment, but not for administrative or staff costs. One of the things this program required when we applied for it was a 20% local match, and we raised private philanthropic dollars to meet that match requirement to avoid the nonprofits we select from having to come up with match. But we are assuming that your facility manager, your office manager, someone who will take responsibility for this grant, that their time is sort of an in-kind contribution to the program. So that's kind of a run through of the program. Let's see. And I'm sure there's a number of questions.
Marlene, in chat, there were 2 questions about if people could submit an application for multiple buildings that they own.
Yes, so if you have multiple buildings that you feel both would or all would qualify, you have to submit them separately because we're going to be considering each building separately. So we need to know, the extent to which you are, where you're located, who you're serving, that sort of thing. And
they'd also like you to confirm that solar projects will not be considered.
That's correct. This program, we're not able to under the DOE requirements. We're hopeful there are going to be some additional funding opportunities coming out from the Department of Energy and possibly EPA for solar energy. The state of Missouri has received a big Solar for All grant, and we're hopeful that some of those resources will come into Kansas City to help with some housing improvements relative to solar energy and possibly some nonprofit buildings within disadvantaged neighborhoods. And we can keep you apprised as we learn more about that program.
It looks
Marlene,
like go ahead.
I'll just add to that. On the solar front, if that's a project that you're looking at doing and you're not considering other energy efficiency improvements, as Marlene said, this is probably not the right fund for you, but there are opportunities through the investment tax credit for nonprofits to actually get a direct pay for a percentage of the cost of solar. So I'll put some information in the chat on that. If that's something you're looking into, whether this program is right for you or not, you certainly could stack that on top of your energy efficiency project. But just to let you know that nonprofits are eligible for that. It's not usually on a nonprofit's radar because you don't pay taxes, but this actually has an exception for nonprofits.
Thank you, Ashley. I think that'll be very helpful. And we could also add that to our website, that information.
So Marlene, people have put in a few questions in chat. So if you like, I could just read them to you if you want to answer them.
That would be great, Catherine.
Desiree Long would like to know, like to confirm that they will not need to have a bid before the August 23 deadline. Bids will happen November 24 through January 25.
That's correct. And we are going to be making a selection based on the criteria that I mentioned, but also the initial energy assessment or level 1 audit, looking at potential improvements that might be able to be made and whether they could achieve the 15% savings.
The next question is, are transitional housing shelters considered multi-unit housing buildings and thus not eligible?
So if multi-unit, if your transitional housing has individual apartments, and if they are individually metered, then no, they would not be eligible.
And Aaron would like to confirm that animal shelters will not be considered.
That's correct.
Okay, the next question is, can a church apply if it does not have a 501c3 designation?
No, unfortunately, it's a requirement by the Department of Energy that we can only serve 501c3 organizations.
There's a couple of folks that would like to know if the recording of the session can be sent out after.
Yes, I think we can certainly do that.
Okay. And then another question is, will we use DOE analysis software? Custom engineering? I'm not sure what that means, but.
What we're hoping to do, we're hoping to work with Metropolitan Energy Center to make use of the Energy Star portfolio program manager. We don't have any particular DOE software that we've been provided with for purpose of this particular grant.
Another question is, how do you determine that a nonprofit is able to handle federal funds?
So one of the things that we do, and there may be other approaches that other organizations use, because we do subcontract quite a bit of the funds that come to our organization. We have a risk assessment tool that we use. It's kind of a checklist, and we could certainly provide that helps you and others sort of evaluate whether or not there might be concerns about your receiving and being able to manage federal funds. It part of it may be in how you manage your finances, how you record your receipts and your expenditures and account for those funds. It may be the process by which you approve payments to ensure appropriate fiscal responsibility. It may be ability to bid out and review and select appropriate bidders to handle contracting and project management for a grant while it's underway. So those are some of the things we would look at, and we'd be happy to share with you a checklist that might help you in considering that. I do think we are hopeful that we will have some smaller nonprofits apply for this program that we'd be able to assist. And as I mentioned toward the beginning, Community Capital Fund and Mark have indicated that we're willing to discuss the possibility of serving as a fiscal agent if we identify a strong organization that may be concerned about their capacity to handle federal funds directly.
Okay, Margaret asks, in addition to the resources Ashley just shared, can you discuss the relationship between this and other related grant opportunities, those that support facility improvements and GHG reduction? That will be overseen by Mark, sorry, and other partners over the coming months.
Okay. I can tell you, some of you have been involved or heard about a large EPA grant application that Mark submitted in late April of this year. And a significant portion of the grant, if it's awarded, it would be a 5-year grant, would be to support building energy efficiency. And Ashley was very involved in that grant application, but that could be another source of funding to support buildings for whether it's renewables like solar or whether it's for the more conventional energy conservation improvements that we've been discussing as part of this particular grant. And for any eligible organization that's not able to be assisted through our grant, we'll make sure that we have you connected to that grant program if it's indeed funded. And we're hoping to learn the outcome of that grant by late August. And as we learn more about the Solar for All, we'll be sure and share that with this audience. And there may be others coming up that I'm not aware of yet.
Laura asks, are new roofs allowable?
So it's allowable. I think we would have to judge the return on investment in terms of energy savings, and look at it in terms of sort of the costs, and whether that could be accomplished within the limits of the grant.
Jacques asks, can funds be used to pay construction salaries, just not salaries within the nonprofit agency? Is that correct?
Correct. I mean, you, as an organization, you would be bidding out the work. And so if, for example, a part of the work that you would desire to be accomplished would be to replace some windows that would require some construction, then the construction company that would bid on that, they could pay their workers, they would be paying their workers salaries. It's just we would not use the funds, could not use the funds to pay your organization's salaries.
And a follow-up question, will Mark pay the contractors directly, or will the nonprofit agency pay the contractors, then get reimbursed by Mark?
So the intention is that we would have an agreement with your organization. If you're selected, you would do the bidding and the contracting directly, and you would be responsible for paying the contractor either progress payments or once the work is completed, you would submit that paperwork, and if you're making progress payments, you would be submitting that to us, and we would be reimbursing you for those costs along the way, and then for final approval. And there may be an inspection that your organization and perhaps our organization might want to do together to make sure the contractor has successfully completed the work before a final payment is issued.
Doug asks, is there a scoring process of the application, or is a lot of this driven by the initial audit, or both?
So the selection criteria that I showed on the screen, and I believe is in a document on the Mark website, we are going to have kind of a point system for those 4 areas related to the selection process, one of which is energy, potential for energy savings. And so we will be looking at the location, the service to disadvantaged people and communities, the need for the project, and as well as then the potential to realize the energy savings.
And then I think that just the last one, Marlene, that we have right now is Michael is asking about the checklist and the risk assessment tool. Are we able to provide that?
Yes, we will. I will get it from our fiscal folks, and we can probably post it on our website.
Those are all the questions I see in chat right now.
Okay. Do any of our partners? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, this wasn't a question that was asked that maybe some people might be thinking about. You certainly, if you have a larger capital improvement project beyond that 200,000 that may or may not include energy components, you certainly could combine that with this opportunity if the timeline works for you and you have the funding available to you. So we recognize that $200,000 may not include all of the improvements you're looking to make on a project. Of course, you can just use the 200,000 and have a very distinct project scope with that. That's totally fine as well. But if you do have another set of projects you're trying to get done at the same time, as long as the timeline works for you in early 2025, then we can accommodate that.
I think that's helpful, Ashley. I think as long as if an organization were going to do a larger project and the project to be supported with the Department of Energy funds is a subset of that. We would need to be able to easily document the portion of the improvements that are being paid for by the Department of Energy funds, so that it's clear to the federal agency what their funds were paid for, and be able to document the energy savings that would be accomplished by through those improvements. I will say that we, to the extent that we may not provide the full 200,000 that's available per building. There may be some buildings, for example, that have already done LED lighting, and maybe they've upgraded their HVAC system, but they want a new energy control system. Or maybe there are, some other more modest improvements that they would like to see. And that frankly would allow us to provide assistance to more nonprofits than kind of the minimum number that we're hoping to be able to serve. Any other questions or comments?
I'll just introduce myself because I think I got on a little bit late. But hi, everybody. I'm Andrew Davison with Community Capital Fund Program Manager here. I'll just emphasize the 501c3 ownership. There's a lot of eligibility requirements that if you don't have those things checked off, you cannot be considered for the program. That is one of them, the 501c3 ownership. I put in the link for the Justice 40 map. And so do take a look and familiarize yourself with that tool. If you have any questions, I believe, Marlene, you shared our contact information on the slide deck that came through with this invitation. So I'd be more than happy to assist with that tool.
Yeah, I think
and then,
I was just
I think our emails are on that.
I think mine and Ashley's and Beth Dawson, another member of the Mark staff, but I can make yours and our other partners' emails available. So thanks.
That is fine. Yeah. I'll go ahead and just put mine as andrew@ccf@kansascity.org. So I'll put mine in the chat.
Great.
That way, folks have that information as well. More than happy to assist in that process. On the fiscal sponsorship piece, I'll also add, for CCF, we do have that practice. It can be quite intensive depending upon the level of assistance needed. So for this program, we will have wanted to see substantial eligibility requirements be satisfied before we get to the fiscal sponsorship conversation. And so that's why I want to emphasize again the 501c3 ownership, Justice 40, and then of course the energy audits as well. Those are three kind of big things that really determine whether or not you're eligible for the program. So here to assist and help as much as we can, and appreciate you all's interest in the program.
Thank you, Andrew. I will say, if you have questions after you get off the call, after you look at the application form and consider this opportunity in more detail, you can always email myself, Andrew, Ashley. We're happy to help answer questions. There's also a general info@mark.org email address, and you're welcome to use that, and we'll respond to that as well.
Marlene, Scott wanted to clarify, the energy audit is done after the application. Is that correct?
Yes. So if your organization has already had any energy assessments or audits completed, say within the last 5 years or so, if you would share that with us, and there's a place on the application to upload that document, that would be helpful for us. It would avoid our having to do another audit of your building as part of that application process, but you're not required to do any energy audits before the application deadline. I didn't mention, and I should, that Evergy does have a energy assessment service for small businesses and nonprofits in their service area. And I think a few of our nonprofits have already gone through that process, but they have agreed to assist us with reviewing some of the buildings.
I'll just
Well, I
add
think,
that one of the advantages of the program is even though 25 to 30 will be chosen as the final grant awardees, the process of going through that at what's called an ASHRAE level 1 audit will give you a roadmap for some energy improvements that you can make. So hopefully beyond just the 25 or 30 that are awarded to the end, that you do get some value in going through the application process, because you will have a roadmap that hopefully you can bring to other funders and kind of explain some clear low-hanging fruit that could be saving you energy and putting more funding towards your mission. So just wanted to put that out there, that the process has some value regardless of the outcome.
thank you, Ashley. That's a good point.
And I'm going to put in the chat here the Evergy program.
Okay. Well, again, we really appreciate everyone's interest in this program, your attendance today, and we look forward to hearing from you. And again, if you have any questions, let us know. We'll send out the recording and some additional information. We'll probably post some things to our Mark website, including a FAQ that includes answers to some of the questions that were raised this afternoon. And again, if you have further questions or want to discuss a project, please get in contact with one of us and we'll get back to you quickly. So if there's not any other questions, I think we'll close the meeting for today, and our next informational webinar will be on July the 10th. It'll be similar information provided, but we're happy to have you join if you would like to, or you may want to refer it to other colleagues. So I hope everybody has a good rest of the afternoon. Hopefully it's cooler there today than yesterday. So take care, everybody.